Welcome to From Data to Victory.
Hey, everybody, welcome into an all new episode of From Data to Victory with political strategist Fairalee Carrier, the founder of Republican Political Consulting LLC. I am your host, Mike Leon. Fairalee has been helping candidates in Massachusetts and Texas run organized, data driven campaigns that stay steady under pressure. In today's episode, we're going to look at what happens when the campaigns hit some turbulence to cause, a disruption in that pressure. Fairley will explain how leaders can regain control, protect their message, and move forward. Fairley, it's good to see you. Let me ask you a question here on the onset, which is when the pressure hits the campaign for the first time, what have you seen in your experience candidates usually feel first? Is it confusion? Is it panic? Or is it they're determined to get through it?
First of all, hi Mike, thanks for having me back. Um, First of all, there's a wide array of emotions it always depends on the particular crisis. So I'll just use the example of negative ad campaigns from the opposing side of your ticket. That's usually very jarring when you get your first smear campaign launched against you and you know it's not true, or you know it's been spun to sound some like what it's not. I always tell my clients to just breathe first. Before you do or say anything, breathe. One of the things that I prepare my clients for, and this is in the beginning process of me working with a new candidate, is I do my own opposition research on my clients. And I then meet with them and let them know what's out there on them. And we come up with, strategies for addressing things that may come up or may never come up. It's not so much, learning how to lie about your past, but it's about knowing how to talk about your past. And most people that decide to run for office are tend to be older. It's rare that you have the younger candidate that doesn't have anything going on in their background where they're squeaky clean. So there's always going to be something that comes up or that can be spun in a negative way. And that can be a crisis if people don't know how to properly address it. So I always tell my clients first, when the smear campaign hits, usually I'll know about it beforehand and I'll prepare my clients for it. But when it does hit unexpectedly, I just always tell them to breathe and to not say anything. Don't make any comments. Don't respond to anything. Call me immediately or I'll call them immediately, and we'll come up with a messaging plan for addressing the smear campaign. And a lot of it depends on what the actual substance of it is. If it's something that's completely ridiculous and out of left field, I would consult accordingly. But something that might, require a response is when I work closely with my clients on creating that press release. And I also do media coaching with my clients too. So like if a reporter runs up to them with a microphone and tries to like catch them off guard, they have some prepared responses, even if they don't know like what the answer to the question is. So one of the things about politics is that keeping the candidate authentic is is a constant thing that as a consultant I'm always looking at. Like if my candidate starts to sound robotic, or they start to sound inauthentic, or they start to sound like they might be opening themselves up for a major crisis, like a media campaign, I'm always monitoring, I'm always shutting down, I'm always in constant communication with my clients, letting them know like we talked about this. This could happen, so preparation is always key, but not spinning out of control, not allowing your emotions to dictate what you say and do is the short answer.
Yeah.
Breathe and think before you speak or act.
So let me ask you about the differences here between a mountain or a molehill, right? What in your experience have you tend to see that makes the mountain, the difficult situation spiral out of control if it isn't addressed quickly?
Well, it depends. A mountain can be created out of a molehill through silence. A mountain can be created out of a molehill through the wrong response to what's being alleged. So it really just depends on what the situation is. But the same rules apply. Before you address anything negative in a campaign, always have a planned response, because it is emotional. It is emotional to have your character attacked, to have your authenticity attacked, to have something brought up from your past that you thought, like, how did they even find that? Like, someone's going to talk to your elementary school teacher, really? Like, there's just only so much that you can plan ahead for. And I just think I highly encourage new candidates to work with a consultant because these things do happen. And there's lots of incumbents who sometimes aren't used to having a primary challenger, or they're not used to someone coming in and trying to take their seat from them. So you may not have done anything wrong in your life, but they will figure out something to make you look bad because now you threatened their seat. So, unfortunately, politics can get dirty like that, and I've seen it get dirty like that. But we do have protocols and techniques that we use here at Republican Political Consulting to make those stings less painful.
Fairly, can you share a moment without obviously going, and giving specific names, but can you share a moment from your career where the campaign faced a serious challenge and you managed to recover from it, and what made the turnaround possible?
It's hard for me to answer that question because if I explain the situation, then you'll know who the candidate is. But I guess I can just generally say that we have encountered this before as an agency, and we are not afraid because we know that when we're running campaigns, we're always based in truth. So we always have the truth on our side, and we're not trying to spin our clients to look a certain way that they're not, to be who they are not. So anything that comes our way is usually very manageable for us as a consulting agency because we know our clients. Like I said from the very beginning, I do my own opposition research on my own clients. So it's a very long planning process between deciding to run and then announcing your run, where there's a whole lot of work that we do in the background to anticipate these types of crises and have a plan of action for them. So just generally, I know that you want an example, but I can only say, to maintain my client's confidentiality that we've dealt with this before. And I don't want to say too much because I don't want to give away all of our tactics because then you don't need to hire us. But let's just say that every candidate that I've helped win an election for has gone through this, and we are prepared to handle any attacks or negative or otherwise towards our clients. And we have a lot of connections with the media, with people locally, or we can reach into our toolkit and rectify almost any major scenario. And I personally don't take on clients who I personally don't believe in. So if I don't think that you're a person that's suitable for the office that you're running, I won't even work with you. So it's important that candidates know that you want to work with people who believe in you and who believe in what you're trying to do. And I've turned down clients all the time because I just don't feel they're suitable for the role that they're running for. And I'll tell them that in confidence. And I'll tell them why I've come to certain decisions, and everything is kept confidential and we go our separate ways.
I love that. So, speaking of communication, how have you seen the communication choices during a crisis affect the way voters perceive the candidate afterwards?
I've seen two major reactions. The supporters of the candidate usually want the candidate to immediately fight back, like fight back, immediately respond, defend yourself. Don't let them say these things about you. We know this isn't who you are. We know this isn't something that you ever would have done. And and it's easy to want to do what your voters and the people who are donating to your campaign. It's easy to want to say, okay, I'm going to go defend myself, but sometimes that's not strategically the best way to go. I've seen that reaction, and then I've also seen silence used incorrectly. So sometimes there are certain attacks that you do need to respond to, and then there's other attacks where you can just pretend like it never came up because it's so ridiculous. But as the candidate, you might think you know which way to go, silence or respond, but it's always important to have a consultant or to have someone on your campaign who's an objective third party who can see it as the people watching television are seeing it, who may not even know who you are. They may not know anything about your race or your candidacy. They may never follow politics. They may just see a little tickler on YouTube or something and like, wow, that's really messed up. And they don't even dig further. So we understand that at Republican Political Consulting. We know what types of things need to be addressed and which ones don't. And then sometimes our clients don't always agree with us. Like when we say you should just let that one go through the media cycle, the 24-hour news cycle. They want to address it, and we have arguments, we have back and forth, we have disagreements, and I always have to explain why we've come to this decision, why it's best in the long term that we proceed this way as opposed to the way you may want to proceed. But at the end of the day, you're the candidate, so we often have to do what our candidates want to do, even if we know that they're going down the dark road and we see the train coming. But we can't tell you what to do, but we can just give you the benefit of our best advice and experience.
Well, let me ask you, and let's stay on this for a second, because some campaigns, we've seen them maybe try to hide the problem. Other ones over explain, like you said, hey, just let it die out. It'll die out with the news cycle. What have you seen that helps the candidate find the right balance between you can be transparent about it, but then there's also the discipline about it?
Well, there's one way that's sort of in the middle, and I'll share this as a freebie. But if you're a candidate and you find yourself the subject of a negative attack, one way to satisfy your need as a candidate to want to address it, and maybe my need as a strategist for you to be silent, is to address it, but locally. Like you can have a fundraising event, you can have a meet and greet, you can have some in-person event where you bring it up during that in-person event. And that way you're testing the ground to see how are my voters thinking about this particular issue. And many times when candidates go that route, addressing it locally or within their constituency, they find that their voters don't really care, or their voters may care a lot. And that's a good way of, like, in the middle ground, satisfying the need of the candidate who wants to respond or say something. And mine is a consultant for you to say, no, we're not going to issue an official press release on this. No. You know, so that's one thing I've done in the past, and it's a really good a testing ground to see how your voters are going to react. And that those are the only people that you should care about as a candidate is your voters. Because are your voters like watching Fox News, or are they watching CNN, or do they even watch cable news? Maybe they don't. Maybe they watch independent media like on YouTube and different podcasters. You need to know your audience and you need to know your voters. And at the end of the day, they're the only opinion that you should care about as a candidate.
Very well said. You mentioned before about stress and how it can potentially divide, whether it be the strategist and the candidate. How do you encourage the kumbaya moments, the unity when people inside the campaign start pointing fingers at each other?
So one of the things that I like to build into all of my campaign teams is an opportunity to acknowledge hard work, because there's a lot of dead time in a campaign. Everyone's excited at the beginning. You file your paperwork, you make your announcement, and then from that point on, it's just a constant daily battle of how can I remain relevant? How can I, keep my campaign in the press? How can I keep people thinking about this particular race and me in it? And that can get discouraging sometimes because, like right now, you and I we're filming at the end of 2025, and this is going to launch for the midterm cycle of 2026. You're going to have a lot of people out there wanting to run for office. A year is a long time, and you have to find ways to stay positively out there. And meanwhile, there's so much work going on in the background. You've got volunteers that are knocking doors, that are phone banking, that are doing mail outs, that are, trying to get you in front of press for interviews. And the reality is that most Americans don't care about politics until maybe like the last month before an election, they start looking at it. But that doesn't mean that you can't not work until that last month. So I always recommend, like, pizza parties for the campaign, like, having little competitions within the campaign on the campaign team, like, you know, whoever knocks, X amount of doors before Sunday gets a prize, and or recognizing like your top grassroots activists of the week, things like that. Having little moments built into the campaign where your volunteers feel like the candidate is still thinking about me. He still appreciates the work I'm doing. He's checking in with me. He sees that I'm working hard, that I'm working for free, basically, taking my time away from my family to work for him or her. Those acknowledgments go a long way towards keeping everyone in the campaign activated and motivated, and the stamina and energy that's required for the long haul. And there's going to be people in your campaign that start with you that don't finish with you. There's going to be people that, especially towards the closer to your election, you're going to have a lot of people coming toward you at the end of your election, the end of the campaign season for your election, wanting to jump on the bandwagon at the last minute. And through implementing like regular, consistent, recognitions of hard work within your campaign team, that decreases burnout, and it also keeps your volunteers, positive and excited and happy that they want you to be their representative.
Yeah. Fairly, as we wrap on today's episode, after a crisis has happened, what have you seen that successful campaigns do differently to make sure they don't repeat the same problem next time?
So the best lessons are learned in the fire. And um, when I've seen candidates use restraint and not immediately react to a crisis, and once they see for themselves how valuable silence can be in certain situations, it's an experience for them that they never forget. So for first time candidates, a lot of what you're doing is learning on the ground. Like you have good intentions, you want to run for office, you got all this positive energy, and then wham, here comes a crisis. Here comes bad press. Here comes someone, your grandmama's cousin from, two marriages ago or something, like comes out of nowhere, and you're like, it can cause stress, but the reaction is, the best thing I can say is follow the advice of your strategist, of your consultant. Or if you've got someone on your team who's been doing campaigning before, who has experience with this, follow direction of people who have been through this crisis before. That's the best thing I can say, because every crisis is different. Every crisis requires a different type of approach. So the candidate who follows the advice of those around him, who him or her has entrusted as advisors, when they take that advice, I've seen candidates really lean into the benefit of having those consultants, because they totally, in self-honest reflection, know that they would have done something totally different. But had they done it their way, they probably wouldn't be, putting together a transition team for a winning election. So
Yeah. Fairly, thank you so much for the time and insights on this topic. I truly appreciate it as always.
thank you for having me.
And that's it for today's episode of From Data to Victory with Fairalee Carrier. If you want to learn more about the work that Fairalee and her team do over at Republican Political Consulting LLC, do me a favor, visit fairalee.com right now. Before you leave, don't forget to like, subscribe, leave a review, and comment, or share the episode with somebody who's maybe thinking about running for office. As always, I'm Mike Leon. We'll see everybody next time.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.